Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking developments to come out of Eastern Europe in recent years, the growing crisis in Belarus. The situation in Minsk has taken a dramatic turn, as reports suggest parts of the Belarusian army are turning against President Alexander Lukashenko's regime. What began as scattered whispers of discontent within the ranks has now evolved into what many are calling a full-blown crisis of loyalty and control. The question everyone is asking now is simple but terrifying: who really controls Belarus at this moment? To understand how we got here, we need to rewind a little. For years, Lukashenko maintained a tight grip over Belarus, often referred to as Europe's last dictatorship. Through a combination of fear, propaganda, and control over the military and security apparatus, he managed to suppress opposition and maintain power, even when his popularity waned. The protests following the 2020 elections were massive and historic, but they were brutally crushed with the help of loyal police and security forces. Thousands were detained, tortured, or forced into exile. For a while, it seemed like Lukashenko had weathered the storm once again. But cracks have been quietly forming within the system, especially among those who once stood firmly behind him. The Belarusian army has traditionally been seen as one of the regime's most reliable tools of control. However, over the past year, reports of dissatisfaction among officers and soldiers have been growing. Many within the armed forces are said to be frustrated by corruption, poor living conditions, and the sense that Lukashenko's loyalty to Moscow is pushing Belarus into a war that isn't theirs. Belarus's growing involvement in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, even indirectly, has caused deep divisions among soldiers who see themselves as patriots of Belarus, not as pawns of the Kremlin. Things began to unravel faster when Lukashenko made several key leadership changes in the defense ministry earlier this year. Some analysts believe these purges were attempts to eliminate officers suspected of disloyalty. Instead, they might have accelerated the very rebellion he feared. When elite units in Minsk and Grodno refused deployment orders last week, it sent shockwaves through the entire command structure. For the first time in decades, the regime's monopoly on violence, the ultimate foundation of its power, was openly challenged. On social media, videos began circulating showing troops removing state insignias from their uniforms, while others claimed to have joined a so-called Free Belarus Battalion. Though it's difficult to verify all these reports, the fact that such content is spreading so widely points to a crisis of perception. Even if only a fraction of the army has turned, the belief that Lukashenko is losing control is itself destabilizing. In authoritarian systems, perception often matters as much as reality. Once fear starts to fade, regimes crumble faster than anyone expects. Meanwhile, in Minsk, the government is trying hard to project strength. Lukashenko has appeared on television several times this week, claiming that the traitors will be punished and accusing Western intelligence agencies of orchestrating the unrest. He has also called on Russia for assistance, citing foreign interference and the threat of NATO-backed destabilization. Moscow, for its part, has voiced support for constitutional order in Belarus, but there are signs of hesitation. With Russia itself stretched thin by its war in Ukraine, it may not be eager to intervene militarily in Belarus unless absolutely necessary. The Kremlin's calculus is tricky. Belarus is vital for its strategic depth, but an outright occupation or military crackdown could spark an uncontrollable backlash among Belarusians already wary of Moscow's shadow. This raises the question of who exactly controls Belarus right now. The answer is complicated. On paper, Lukashenko remains in power. The presidential palace is intact, the state media still sings his praises, and loyalist units of the KGB and Interior Ministry continue to operate. But in reality, his grip has never been weaker. Several reports suggest local commanders are acting independently in certain regions. In cities like Brest and Mogilev, military checkpoints have been established that do not appear to answer directly to Minsk. Some are calling it a silent mutiny, not a full-blown coup, but a refusal to obey orders that no longer make sense. Civil unrest is growing as well. Protesters have once again returned to the streets, though not with the same scale as 2020. Yet, this time, they sense that the state's security shield is cracking. Opposition figures in exile, such as Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, have called on soldiers to stand with the people, framing this as Belarus's final chance to reclaim democracy. She's even offered amnesty to any soldiers who defect peacefully. Her call is resonating, especially among younger officers who joined the military out of patriotism, not politics. The international community is watching closely. Poland and Lithuania have increased border security, fearing that instability in Belarus could spill across the frontier. NATO has called for restraint but has also warned Russia against any intervention. The European Union is considering emergency sanctions targeting key regime figures and military leaders still loyal to Lukashenko. Meanwhile, the United States has said it supports the Belarusian people's right to determine their own future. However, Western powers remain cautious. They've seen how quickly revolutions in this region can spiral into chaos, especially when nuclear-armed Russia is just next door. The economic situation adds more fuel to the fire. Belarus's economy, already battered by sanctions and mismanagement, is teetering on the edge of collapse. Inflation is soaring, factories are shutting down, and state salaries are months behind. The government's attempts to print money and suppress criticism have only deepened public anger. For many Belarusians, the political crisis is now a survival issue. They simply can't afford to live under this regime any longer. Inside the military, loyalties are being tested like never before. Some units remain fiercely loyal to Lukashenko, driven by personal ties, fear of retribution, or promises of rewards. Others have gone silent, neither joining the rebellion nor defending the regime. Analysts warn that this kind of fragmentation can quickly lead to chaos, especially if armed groups begin operating independently. The nightmare scenario would be a descent into civil conflict, a fight not just for power, but for the very identity of the nation. And then there's the Russian factor. For years, Lukashenko managed to play a delicate game between East and West, leveraging his alliance with Moscow to gain economic and political support, while occasionally flirting with Europe to extract concessions. That balancing act is now impossible. His dependence on the Kremlin is total, and that gives Russia enormous leverage. Some believe Putin may see this as an opportunity to tighten control over Belarus completely, perhaps through a union state merger that would effectively erase Belarusian sovereignty. Others think Moscow might prefer a more subtle approach, replacing Lukashenko with a more compliant but less toxic figure, someone who could stabilize the country while keeping it firmly in Russia's orbit. For the Belarusian people, though, this crisis is not just about geopolitics. It's about reclaiming their future. After years of silence, fear, and repression, they are watching the system that ruled them begin to crack. In the streets of Minsk, there's a sense of cautious hope mixed with deep uncertainty. Many know that the fall of one strongman doesn't guarantee freedom. It could just as easily bring more chaos. But even so, there's a growing belief that change, long unthinkable, may finally be within reach. So, who controls Belarus now? The honest answer is no one entirely. Lukashenko still holds the capital and parts of the security apparatus. The army is divided. Moscow is cautious. The people are restless but not yet unified. In other words, Belarus stands at a crossroads, its future hanging in the balance. Whether it descends into further turmoil or finally begins a painful journey toward freedom will depend on what happens in the next few days and weeks. As we continue to watch this story unfold, one thing is clear: Belarus will never be the same again. The illusion of total control that Lukashenko built over decades has been shattered. Even if he manages to cling to power for now, the trust, loyalty, and fear that once sustained him are gone. And in authoritarian regimes, once those disappear, everything else soon follows. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next update on this rapidly developing story. The world is watching Minsk tonight, and the future of Belarus is being written in real time.